Hello and welcome to another episode of You Don't Know Jack, an HHN fancast. I'm your host, Nick. This fancast, which is not affiliated with Universal's Halloween Horror Nights in any way, aims to explore the story of previous years, as well as speculation on upcoming houses, zones, and everything to do with the greatest horror event of all time. On today's episode, I present to you the second installment of the history of the icons of Halloween Horror Nights. This particular icon discovered the evil that lurks in the hearts of men. He has held the heart of Halloween within his grasp. He is a father, and he has domain of many islands of fear. He is the Caretaker. Yes, the Caretaker will be the focus of today's history of, seeing as he was the icon to follow Jack, even though, as we will discuss, that wasn't the original plan. As with the previous history of episode, we will be covering both this icon's real-world origin as well as his fictional backstory. So, let's not waste any more time and dive into the twisted history of the Caretaker. The Caretaker made his debut in 2002 at Halloween Horror Nights' Islands of Fear, the first time that the event would branch over to Islands of Adventure for the annual Halloween festivities in order to attract a new crowd to the newly opened theme park. But, as previously mentioned, this was not the original plan, and the Caretaker wasn't even supposed to exist, at least not yet. Originally, following the success of Jack the previous 2 years, HHN looked to introduce another brand new original icon, Cindy. Cindy was a twisted child with a desire for death, destruction, and chaos. Each island in Islands of Adventure would be home to her playthings, as she would be the thread inciting the characters of each island to obey her sadistic whims. However, this plan never came to fruition due to a sudden uptake in child kidnappings as the event approached. Not wanting to seem unsympathetic, Universal decided to change their icon at the last minute, a theme that has come back multiple times through the years. They would find inspiration by diving deeper into Cindy's story and looking toward her parents. Thus, the concept for the Caretaker was born. Originally named Paul Bearer, then later changed to Dr. Albert Kane, he was created as the father to Cindy, and the reason for her obsession with death would come from her father being a caretaker who conducted twisted experiments on his victims. Instead of the island being filled with Cindy's playthings, the creatures and characters were changed to be the Caretaker's henchmen, who roamed the terrifying islands. The Caretaker was portrayed by actor Bryce Ward for publicity and television appearances, and an elaborate opening ceremonies which featured a victim being tortured by snakes and scorpions before being gutted. The Caretaker's design resembles an undertaker, wearing a traditional undertaker's tuxedo, a top hat, and often carrying his bag of tools. His face looks very aged and somewhat sunken, not unlike a corpse, with bright eyes and long, straggly hair. He was created by the Universal Creative Design Team under the guidance of T.J. Mandarin, the former Director of Art and Design at Universal Orlando Resort. After welcoming us to his Islands of Fear in 2002, the Caretaker would go on to make multiple appearances at Halloween Horror Nights, including HHN 12, 13, 14, 16, 19, 20, 25, and 30. Being the second ever official HHN original icon has allowed for years and years of lore and storytelling, from his daughter Cindy to Fear's Lantern to 30 years of Fear. So, now that we know his real-world origin, let's dive into the fictional story of the Caretaker. Once a well-respected surgeon, Dr. Albert Kane became the caretaker of Shady Oak Cemetery in Willamette Valley. He eventually converted the Victorian-style mansion he and his family lived in into a mortuary and funeral parlor. For years during his career as a surgeon, Dr. Kane was intensely interested in the inner workings of the body. What happened to the patients he couldn't save? What happens to a person when they die? Kane set out on a journey to answer this question as he and his family eventually used the deceased of his hometown as guinea pigs in unnatural and bizarre experiments. His demented, quote, extended family, made up of both blood relatives and deranged assistants, dug up the bodies of both the recently and not so recently dead and used them either for Kane's experiments or their elaborate parties or as house decorations. Kane performed these experiments in an attempt to discover the nature of the soul. For fresh specimens, Kane would go into the nearby town to find homeless people, and, in what seemed like a charitable offer, invited them into his mansion/funeral home until they got back on their feet. Instead of helping, though, he would perform horrifying surgeries on them, carving them open on the operating table while they were restrained and often fully conscious without any anesthesia. Kane occupied his time performing acts of the most brutal cruelty: chemical injections, brutal amputations, live dissections, castrations, electroshock, even organ removal. Kane kept notes and audio recordings, but as time went on and his madness increased, these became rambling discussions, often delving into the philosophical. Sometimes, a few of Kane's assistants would steal body parts during the surgery that he wasn't using so that they may include them as dinner ingredients, even going as far as to use corpses as their playthings in elaborate funeral parties. Kane also explored experiments of fear, where he would push to see how much the human mind could take before succumbing to madness and death, which did result in at least one person being buried alive. One day, the terrible sight of the Kane family was seen by two teenagers who decided to take a late-night walk through the cemetery while telling ghost stories. Walking past the gravestones, the two heard music off in the distance. Following the sound, they came across Shady Oaks Cemetery, where they witnessed the Kane family dancing with the rotted remains of decaying corpses. After this event, word of what was happening around the Kane family quickly spread, and soon the authorities got involved. The police launched a massive investigation under the guide of Police Chief Brockett, which led to the order of all individuals at the crime scene being placed under arrest while an investigation was conducted. Offering no resistance, Kane happily cooperated with the authorities, seeming eager to show them the results of his twisted research. Reports of what the authorities found inside the house made headlines that shocked and mortified the nation. The local townspeople, which was mostly comprised of relatives of the deceased used in the caretaker's experiments, decided to take matters into their own hands. They formed a mob and marched on the Kane household, setting fire to the Kane's Victorian mansion and the whole area with the Kane family trapped inside. Upon an investigation of the remains, no one was able to find the body of Albert Kane or his demented family, with one exception: the body of his daughter, Cindy. However, investigators did discover an elaborate network of tunnels which started in the cellar and ran for miles underneath the graveyard. It seemed to allow the Kanes to steal bodies from below. Among the ghoulish evidence was a kitchen filled with body parts, a corridor filled with intestines, an eyeball on the stove, boiling brains, a collection of skulls, and audio recordings. Some of the recordings were Dr. Kane's notes, some his recordings from live surgeries, and some that appeared to be audio diaries. Before eventually torching the entire site, 4 victims were positively identified, and 2,000 graves were estimated to have been tampered with. One year later, the Shady Oak Cemetery has been off-limits to everyone until the charred remains of the Kane family home were set to be demolished. At least, that was the idea until the discovery of 3 unidentified, decomposing bodies on the premises. Not long after, people who were reported to be in the vicinity of the site began to go missing. Several research teams were dispatched to the now reopened cemetery to investigate reports of strange noises emanating from the ruins of the Shady Oak Cemetery, which could be connected to the terrible secrets of its horrifying past. With 3 teams already gone missing, the question began to linger in people's minds. Could Albert Kane and his family have escaped that fire? Well, the answer is uncertain. While it is not confirmed whether or not he is undead or has been alive all along, he did, in a sense, live on. With the help of his real god, he took control over various creatures such as Treeks and Foons, the Nightmare, and Carnage. Together, they plunged the Islands of Adventure into a world infected with the Caretaker's darkness, still residing in his abandoned mortuary, tampering with the brains of his victims to test their capacity for fear. In 2006, the Lord of Darkness summoned the souls of 4 icons of evil, the Caretaker being one of them, to return and partake in a birthday party which celebrated 16 years of horror. The Caretaker himself, with the help of his society, would perform a dark ritual that would finally bring his dead daughter Cindy back to life. Cindy was back by his side, and while she still has yet to be the headliner like her father, she continues to make appearances, possibly waiting for the day that she can take back what is rightfully hers and add to the collection of her playthings. A few years later, Fear was summoned. As the icon Fear took over the event, he summoned the icons of the past to act as his minions and eventually made them heralds, all while controlling them with his lantern. The Caretaker was among them, becoming the Herald of Death and forever being linked to Fear through the new markings on his neck, and was trapped inside Fear's lantern. Later, Bloody Mary and Jack broke him out of the lantern to participate in the 25th year of Terror. Once the year concluded, he returned to Fear's lantern until making his return at the 30th year of Fear, where he and his fellow icons fought within Fear's lantern to see who could reign supreme. Throughout the 30th year of Fear, Dr. Albert Kane continued to remind us that the Caretaker is here, and your time has come. At the time of recording, Halloween Horror Nights 30 is the last time we have seen the Caretaker. While the future of the event always remains uncertain, the Caretaker is a true fan favorite icon, and hopefully it won't be too long until we see him returning to discover the secrets of the soul and push our fears to the limit. Perhaps the next time we see him, he will bring Cindy along once again. Or perhaps he may even play second fiddle to Cindy, giving her the spotlight after all these years since her initial cancellation. While Jack has been teased much more heavily than the Caretaker, that doesn't mean that there hasn't been anything to give fans of the Caretaker hope for a future return. During Dr. Oddfellow's opening speech at Halloween Horror Nights 32, he referenced our worship of directors, caretakers, and even clowns, keeping the Caretaker fresh in our minds and possibly hinting that somewhere down the line, we will get to revisit the Caretaker's gruesome experiments. Thank you for listening to this episode of You Don't Know Jack, an HHN fancast. This podcast is not affiliated with Universal Orlando Resort or any parent companies. If you enjoyed the journey, feel free to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, remember that you don't know Jack, never go alone, and I'll see you in the fall.